to. Just sitting here enjoying an evening smoke. I've had a lot of questions on my pipes on how I get this long hollow stem, and I thought I would. I've got a friend that wants me to make him a pipe, so I thought I'd bring you along and let you see just how I make them. They smoke very well, anyway, if you want to see how I make these, stick around. Let's get started. After I finish my pipe. Okay. Well, first of all is wood selection. I think walnut is going to make a nice looking bowl. I like that dark looking bowl, but any kind of hardwood will work just fine for you. This is about 2.5 by 2.5, maybe 3 by 3. It's about 3.5 inches tall. Your bowl needs to be very, very well seasoned wood, or when it starts getting hot, it can possibly crack. I'm thinking about making the stem out of this cherry. It's got a good, straight grain right here. It's got a good straight grain, so it should bend without breaking. And I've got a piece of maple here. This is what I'm going to make a form out of to bend my piece into shape. And all I'm going to do is find an angle that I like, which is how it's going to hang, and I'm just going to try to catch that angle this way, right here, and then I'll use a French curve to make my mouthpiece, which I believe, and you want it to be tangent. So I've marked down 3/8 of an inch, which is where I want to be, because I'm going to be cutting this out in just a few minutes. So this is what I'm kind of looking at, and I need to do the same thing down here where it goes into the pipe, right here, just like that. As you can see, I've made 2 parallel lines here. This is what I'm going to cut out. My stem will be about 3/8 of an inch thick, so there's 3/8 inch space between here. All of this needs to go. Okay, if you just make one single cut and then you try to clamp it together, you won't get even clamping pressure. You need to take out the 3/8 all the way through, or half, ever how big you want it. So I've marked my lines. I've marked out all my waste. Now I'm just going to begin cutting this out on the bandsaw. Okay, I've cut my form. I've cut my form out on the bandsaw, and basically I left the line to the waist. I cut to the waist side, left the line, and then I came back to my belt sander and just sanded all the edges down to the line, so I get a good match up, just about like that right there. Next step will be to cut down the cherry to go into the form, so we can get it glued up. All right, that's what's next. Okay, I've got my saw set up to make a 1/8 inch rip all the way down. Got the blade just barely protruding through the wood. Again, big on that. If I get my hand in there, it doesn't go no more than 1/8 of an inch. Well, let's cut these down. I need 4 pieces. I need 3 for lamination, and then 1 piece for a sizer. And you'll see what I mean in a few minutes. At 5/16, and that should leave the other side ending at 5/16. Should be right down the very center. I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to make that cut right quick. Okay, I've got my saw set up. I'm just going to cut this kerf and make this kerf cut. this is going to be my centerpiece. This is actually what's going to form the hole in the stem. Now when I begin my glue up, I'll have one layer, and then this layer will be separated, just like so. And then this layer will be on top, and that'll form a hole all the way down. Of course it won't be that big, but it'll form a hole all the way down the stem. And then this piece is going to be my spacer piece, so I can get the space that I need to go into the bowl. Well, I'll get started gluing up now. Okay, I've just started building up my stem. I've got the middle piece put in. If you notice, I've got a channel right down the middle. It's actually it's probably less than 1/16 of an inch. I'm getting ready to put the top layer on, and then I'm going to clamp it up. Okay. Well, we're clamped up. I had to stop my clamping before I actually got into the full curve because I started hearing cracking. So I decided just to stop and go with this. Now what I have here is just a steel wire that I'm going to run through the whole thing a couple of times just to make sure I get all the glue out of the hole. Well, as you can see, I've got my wire in. I ended up cutting the ends off with a coping saw. I was having a very hard time getting the wire through. What it is, it makes a double curve here. So as it's curving one way, it doesn't want to curve back the other. Sometimes you just have to push that wire through just maybe 1/8 of an inch at a time, but eventually you'll get it through. This is what will ensure that you have a good solid tube going right up through the middle of your stem. And okay, well, I'm going to get started on the bowl, and I'm going to let this set up. In a few minutes I'll come back and I'll pull the wire out, and we'll have a good clean hole. Well, I'm getting my bowl prepped, and what I've done, I've took my blank and I've cut it down to about 1 3/4 inches. Basically a spindle blank, 1 3/4 inches around. It's about 3 3/4, 3 7/8 long. Most of that will all be cut off. Most of this all will be cut off right here. But I've started basically drawing out the interior of my pipe here on the side. I'm going to have a 7/8 inch bowl. It's going to be about 1 1/4 inches long. But as I do my shaping and stuff, some of that will go away. It'll end up being around 1 1/8 inches deep at the end. Now what I'm going to do is, most of this will be done on the lathe. Most of my shaping and all will be done on the lathe. But this is going to be the bottom, and I may end up, bowling this out. They tend to smoke better if you do. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right there. And what I'll do is I'll come in here with a Forstner bit, and then I'll cut out the rest with a scraper. But I want my hole to end up right about here. And I'm looking at about a 45-degree angle. So I need to grab my square and cut out, or draw out 45 degrees. So I can find out where I need to cut my hole. Right about here. Okay, now that'll hit the bottom and across the top. I just need to transfer that mark over to the other side. So I'll do right here. This way I'll know where to drill this hole, because I'll be drilling it on the drill press. I'll be drilling it on the drill press and not on the lathe. So measure out this half mark, then 3/4 plus 1/8. there. Okay, this is going to be the point where I drill. And I'll drill straight through, down actually to about this depth here. And then I'll have my bowl ready to put on the lathe. Alright. Okay, I've got my 1/2 inch Forstner bit in there. That's the size hole I'm gonna need to attach my stem. Got my cowl set up to hold it in place, or at least as a guide so that I can get it right. And I'm just gonna drill my hole. I'm gonna drill it to this depth. So here we go. And you have to be careful here with that Forstner bit because you're starting out on one side. You just have to go very, very, very easy with it. I'm just trying to get down into the bowl. And I'll make my final cuts once I get the bowl turned to the diameter that I want. I'll complete that hole and mount my stem. Okay, here we go. Forstner bit's mounted. It's a 7/8 inch Forstner bit. Of course, you could use any size that you want. You know, I just found 3/4 just doesn't look, I don't know. But anyway, a 1 inch is just too much. But we're going to start boring this hole. I've got a 1 inch mark right here. That's where I'm going to stop. I know I want to go about 1.25 inches, but as I go down, I'm going to need to scrape out the bottom and round that out. So that's why I'm leaving 1/4 there. So here we go. We'll bore this out. Alright. There we go. Tailstock back out of the way. Let's look and see what we've got. Okay. As I come in here with my piece, that should be right at the bottom of the bowl. Just using this round scraper right here. I'm just going to round it out. Make it look nice. Now, I've got my bowl cut down. I got a nice smooth bottom in it. Now what I'm going to do is, I know that this right here, this mark is about the bottom of my bowl, within, you know, just a small fraction of 1 inch. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mark that off so I'll know where it is. And then I'm just going to start shaping this thing. Okay, now I'm just going to start shaping. What I'm going to do is I'm going to part this off down here somewhere, and I'm going to mount it in a jam chuck, which I use I use this. It's my jam chuck for my pipes. Fits very well in there. So I'm going to get this parted off, and then I'm going to mount it on my jam chuck. Going to part it off way down in case I want to use some of this later. Okay. Now, I'm ready to mount that. Got it mounted on my jam chuck. Getting ready to turn here. Alright, now what I'm trying to do, I'm going to thin down the top just a little bit. And I'm going to kind of round it out to the bottom and try to finish off the bottom with a nice little curve. Okay, so without any further ado, see what we can do here. Speed it up some, I get a little better touch that way. Close to where the bottom is. And what I'm going to do is start rounding this off. Okay, I've got it sanded down to about 220 now. I've just sanded 220. I'm just going to burn a couple little marks in here. I'm going to burn one up here and maybe one or two down here. So let's see. I just need something for the wire to ride in. Got my wire. I made this from guitar string. I'll lay it in here. Let it burn. Okay. Alright, I'm going to finish sanding with 320, 400, and 600, and then and I'll be back. Okay, while it's still on the lathe, I'm going to take my Dremel and I'm basically going to put a fake bark look on here. So and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw lines, you know, vertically from this burn down to this first burn, and if all turns out right, it looks like bark. And here we go. I'll make a couple of heavy lines and I'll come back and sort of fill in between them, just like so. And I'll continue on. I want it to look kind of rough. I don't want any straight lines. Don't want anything straight. And I'll continue on with this. And I'll be back in a few minutes and I'll get done. Okay. Well, now I've got my false bark on here. It's quite a job getting the little burrs out, but you know, take your time sanding and all that. And if you do have some like this little area right here, once you get your first coat of finish, it'll harden all that up. It'll make it easier to touch up the sanding to get that off with, because it'll just stiffen the fibers and they'll cut right off. But that pretty much finishes up the bowl. Now I'm still letting the stem, I'm still letting it dry. I'm going to have to finish up this area right around this, and I'll go ahead and be doing that while that is. And what I'll do is I'll take my file and just start filing around and just kind of round this over and sand it up good. I believe that's going to be nice looking once I get some finish on it. Alright, well, I took this thing out of the form, and the cherry decided it wanted to be straight again. And the shear forces was actually strong enough to break the glue. I mean, good Lord. Anyway, I think I may have cut them a little bit too thick. I got these right at dead on 1/8. But cherry doesn't bend very well, apparently. So what I did, I bent another one. And this one is made of maple. Anyway, it bent very well. You can see nice curves. And with the sizing piece that I cut back when I cut my strips, with the sizing piece, I cut it down so I could put on the top and the bottom. I glued them down. That way I get a good thickness. So it's at least a 1/2 inch thick now on all sides. So now when I go to shape this, I can face off a dowel, and it'll fit right into the bowl, which is right here, just like that. Alright, well, it's time to get started shaping. I'm going to cut the ends of these off, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and cut this down to a 1/2 inch wide. I'll measure from the hole, not half of this, but from wherever the hole is. From here, I'll measure the hole, and I'll get a 1/4 inch on this side and a 1/4 inch on that side. I'll run it through the bandsaw and rip it down, so this whole thing will be a 1/2 inch wide. And then down here, I'm going to start shaping my dowel. And I'll knock all the corners off on the belt sander, and I'll ease up all these corners and stuff like that. And then after that, it'll all be with a file. I'll be shaping it all with a file. So anyway, I'll get started doing that. Well, now I've got my rip fence set. I've got my marks made. This is 1/2 inch wide. I want a 1/4 inch on each side of the hole. Okay, so now I've got my rip fence set so I can cut this. But I want to leave the line because I don't want to go inside the 1/2. Now I just let it through. Okay. 1/2 inch. Now I'm thicker than that here, but that's fine because I'm going to be going over to the sander, and I'm going to start turning this into a 1/2 inch dowel to go down into the pipe. With that, I'll get started on that now. Okay, now all I'm going to do now is knock the corners off. Trying to get it some semblance of round. Okay, now I'm just trying to turn the end of this thing into a dowel. I took me a little block and I used a Forstner bit and cut a 1/2 inch hole down in here because I don't want to use the bowl to size this thing. And what I do is I get it on here. Once I get it down just enough so it'll go in, I try to get me some type of little friction mark. And I don't know if you can see it, but you can see the friction mark right in here. And what I'll start doing is I'll start shaping it there where the friction mark is with this file, and just ease these over. That way I can kind of sneak up on it. Try not to go back too far, because if you end up going too small, then it won't fit in there good and tight. I'm just going to knock off the friction marks, and then I'll try again. I'll try it again, a little bit tighter, and there we go. Now I've got the whole thing in there and it's good and tight, so I just keep working it all the way around, over and over and over, until I get this thing perfectly round and it fits in that hole. When it fits in that hole, I know it'll fit down in the bowl of the pipe. That's how I do that. Okay. Well, I've got the dowel where it fits in the bowl very nicely. It's a good tight fit, but it's not anything that's going to try to push the bowl apart or break it. Almost a perfect circle. Now what I'll do is I'll put it in the pipe and get it squared up similar to what I want. I want it seated all the way in, and then I'm going to mark it. I'm going to mark this all the way around so that I know where it sits in the pipe. That way I know not to shape anymore past that point. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the sander. I'm going to start knocking off all these heavy corners here, and I'm going to start working the back side of this dowel on into the stem, you know, and just kind of flare it right on in, and I'm going to get started on that. Okay, as you can see, I've done a lot of the rough out work on the sander, and what I did is the lengthwise I went from a 1/2 inch down to about 1/4, tapering both sides all the way from about here all the way up to there. And on the bottom side, or on the side, I did the same thing. It's thicker right here than it is up here. Now what I'll do is I'll take my file and I'll just start rounding all this over and just work it until I get it all done, and I'll flare this back in and this here, and it'll be kind of worked in sort of like this, and I'm just going to work it with a file now. It's a pretty simple procedure. It just takes a little while. You just kind of rounding everything over, you know, and until you get a nice shape that you like. I like it kind of rounded. I think it looks really neat rounded over. But I'm just gonna work on shaping it, and then once I get it shaped, see, it's really starting to look nice now. Once I get it shaped, I'm gonna start sanding it, and I'll start sanding it probably 220 grit. This file's pretty fine. It's actually a metal file, I think, but it does very well with wood too, and it gets in the little curves. So anyway, let's just keep working on this, and I'll be back in a few minutes when I get ready to kind of sand it up a little bit. Alright, well, I finished all the roughing out with the file, and I guess you can see, you can't even see a glue line in here anywhere. No glue lines. That's really going to look nice. Nice curve to it. But I'm finishing. I went from the file I ended up going 150 grit. Now I'm finishing up with 220. Of course, that's not all the sanding by far, but in just a second I'm going to begin my assembly. And I'm going to do a little bit of carving on it. I'm going to carve his name onto the bottom side of here, and I'll put my name on the bottom side of the bowl along with the date. But now I'm just going to get ready to glue it up. It's good and ready to go. So what I'll do is get a little bit of glue on the tenon here, or on the dowel. Not much, it doesn't take much. It's a tight fit anyway. Not much, just a tad. And you have to be kind of quick with this. Make sure you get glue all the way up to the top, down in there, and then you force it in. There it is. She's seated. Get her lined up before it swells too much. Now then, this is kind of what we're looking at. It's really starting to look nice. Now I need to get this glue off, and I'll just use a wet, I'm sorry. This is what I'm looking at now. Okay? And I'll just get a wet paper towel, wipe that glue off right quick. Okay, if you notice, down inside here, the stem actually protrudes into the bowl. Well, I can't have that. Okay, it happens with every pipe. I mean, it's just, you know, the angles that are involved. So what I do is I come back over here to the drill press with my Forstner bit, and I just cut that out. But you have to be very careful, because if it catches, nice cut. Alright, now I'll start my carving. I've already written his name on here. Don't know if you can actually see that. I've got his name there, my name on the bottom, and I'm just going to start carving this out with my Dremel right here. And this is very nerve-wracking, trying to do this. You need a nice solid area where you can hold your Dremel like a I've got absolutely the smallest bit that I can find for this thing. I'm not even sure what size it is. But I'll be back once this is done, because this could take a while. Okay, I don't know if you can actually see it yet, but I've got his name carved in here. I've got my name on the bottom, and I've gone back through my grits again. I went over all the carvings with 220 grit, and then I just went on through up to 600. Okay, now I'm going to be using a tung oil finish on this. One thing you want to do is run your wire back in there so that you'll have a place that you can hang your pipe as each coat cures. So anyway, it's really starting to look good. The tung oil will bring out all the carbons and stuff like that. You'll really be able to see it better here after we get the first coats on. I'm just using a paper towel pad. I'll apply the first coat. And then I'll have to go back because I still have those little burrs on here that will have to be they'll have to be sanded off, because the bark texture that I tried to put on there is it's a little bit there we go, now I got some in there. The bark texture I put on there is still a little bit rough, so but you just want to get a good coat on there the first time. And I can put on coats of tung oil about once an hour and then let it cure, you know, pretty much all day. I try not to get finished down in the bowl itself, just right around the top lip. I don't know if it would hurt the taste or whatever, but I just don't do it. And then we hit the maple, and this stuff really starts to make things stand out. You'll be able to see the carbons very well pretty soon. But that's it. I'll keep going until I get the finish that I want. The tung oil, it'll get glossier with every coat. So if you like, you know, this right here, then stick with 1 or 2 coats. But about the time you start getting to 3 or 4, you really start getting a high gloss. But as you go, sand in between coats, and make sure you knock off these little burrs that are around here. Okay. Well, that's pretty much the end of another project. I'm going to come back a couple of times and, you know, put 3 or 4 more coats on. I want to kind of go for more of a satin type finish, so I'll probably put about 3 more coats or 2 coats. And but the good thing with the tung oil is it dries quickly. You can put a coat on just about every hour, as long as you know, as long as the tack's gone. All you got to do is knock it off with the 320 or the 400 or 600 sandpaper, and put the next coat on, and just repeat it until you get the finish that you want. I'm not a smoker, and you know, but I do enjoy smoking these pipes every now and then, and you know, just in the evening or something. But I never inhale. Y'all have a good one. See you next time.